Hello and welcome to the assembly video for the Man Cave Puzzles RTV. And keep in mind when you're watching the video, this is sort of put together with a few different assemblies. So if you see things that seem a little bit out of place and out of sync, it's because I've moved things around to keep the flow of the video. When you're putting the smoke together, this is what it will look like when it's ready to go together. There's capacitors on the back in here to make sure that you don't get noise from this motor. Now, this one goes down the center on the bottom. You click it in here like that. And this piece, you're going to make sure that the white one is on the bottom. And it goes in. You can see you want the white one to be in this hole, the white wire there, and it goes in like that. And then we've got two M3 12mm screws. Now that keeps this pretty tight. So then you can put the 1-inch 8mm rubber tube onto that, and this one just goes in there. It's got to be snug or it won't get power, but that's all you need to do. So now we're going to put a tie wrap in here, and we want to make sure that when this, I believe this is a 20mm screw, yeah, when you put the 20mm screw in here, that it doesn't pinch the wires when it goes down, because this will be going all the way down. You don't want to pinch wires under there. So we can put this one, see the way this is? The knob is out this way. Yes, there's a reason for that. And then back through that hole, you've got it through all of the wires, all 4 wires are in there. It's just a strain relief, because when you're assembling this thing, you do pull on these wires. And then push that one down, pull it tight, and I would also suggest pushing these wires out of the way. There. That can go down like that. Then we cut this guy off. Right. So there's two 12mm screws that we're going to put on the chassis, and you can see there's a little gap here, so we'll be able to put that in. I mentioned that this antenna has broken off on me before. Now, I've wound the aluminum wire around the template dowel that you can print, and then I've painted it black and scratched it up a little bit, and then I put it onto the antenna. Now you'll notice this screw goes almost to the top of the antenna, and the reason for that is that there's a weak spot in here, and if when you're driving, oh yeah, you will have to make room for the screw in there. I tap it all the way out, all the way in, and then blow out the leftovers to make sure there's nothing in there, because this goes really deep inside. Oops. This goes very deep inside. It's all the way to the top. Now I want this facing backwards like that. All right. And now with the screw being the full length of this, it will be less likely to break. Before you secure this, the front flashlight assembly on, there are 2 holes here that need to fit the posts that go into the doors very loosely. And if they're tight, you're going to have an issue. Now I would suggest actually doing this even before you run the flashlight wires, because you got to be careful. And it just seems every time I do it, I forget until now. So I'm going to just carefully make sure I don't cut the flashlight wires. And remember, they should be loose for M3. So it's okay to give it a bit of an angle, up, down, sideways. Now you can see the front bar graph wire goes through the side hole here, this side, as well as the two flashlights. So the side bar graph goes on the front here. We've already got the servos plugged in, and the two back. So that one back there is the speaker, and the switch and the LED are here. This one goes to the receiver area, and what we're going to do, this plastic piece, it goes around this connector. But before I do that, I'm going to plug in a couple more things. Now we've done this one. It goes in here. And then I'm going to push it over to the side here. I'm also going to put in the NeoPixel LEDs and fan. So when you're putting this together, you will get a fan, and the fan has to go this way up inside, and the wires go to this side. And the reason for that is because that's the exit for those wires. Once the fan's in there, or before the fan's in there, you can tap with an M3 tap. And you want to use 8mm panhead screws on that. And the reason you do is it's a very tight space, and if you use a cap head on it, it's going to be too big. Then you're trying to make this so that it seals this as much as possible. There'll always be a little bit of smoke leaking out. But try and make it so that this closes as much as possible when you're doing it. Then the NeoPixel LEDs go in, and push it down here as you're putting it through here. Then the wires come back in here, and you can see there's a hole here to hold on to everything. Make sure it's all the way up at the end. And this one will come down in here like this. And what you want to do is get these to be the same length. Make this a bit shorter again. Close to the same length is good. And then the tie wrap goes on underneath everything. And it'd be nice if the wires were on this side, out of the way, and that the capacitor is underneath the tie wrap, like so. And if you want, you can tie these together somewhere else. There it is. The other thing I have done in the past, I've got some black hot glue, and I've put a little bit of hot glue on here just to make it a little more robust, although it's pretty good the way it is. And that is complete. The fan, well, I'm going to put the NeoPixels in first. And I'm going to try and do it without my tweezers today. There we are. There we go. Okay, so all of the connections have been made. The two flashlights are here at the front. I'll try and show you that. Yeah, you can see them right here. Two flashlights. What's the third one for? It's a just in case. What are these for? They're a just in case. You know, if we want to repurpose the board for something else, you can reprogram it and use those for other things. I don't like to leave anything to chance in terms of having to revisit the design. So let's get this piece in. I'm going to move this guy up here as well while we're building. And we've got to get this one. Now this back end will go in first. And try and get this as flat as you can. And the other thing is the wire, this red wire that comes from the bottom, make sure that it's not interfering with putting this plastic piece down, the masterboard retainer. And there you go. All of those are in. Now this is going to get squashed pretty good by this guy in a minute here, so we'll give it a little bit of flattening out and try and keep this away from the heatsink. All right, well, almost everything's plugged in. Next, the receiver. The tab always goes to the inside of the receiver. There we go. And that one goes here. So this is the receiver retainer, and it has a 16 millimeter screw on it. And that screw goes right into the top here. If not, we can loosen it and readjust this after. These two screws to put on, they are 12s and they are pan head. And we put the pan head screws here and here. And we're not going to tighten them down all the way. I'll try and give you a side view. Leave them up about that much. A lot more than you might think, but there's a reason for it. All right. Now, these wires, we want to put this up here, and this one is going to go underneath here and come out on this side of these wires. You can see that there. And we're going to push those two in, and then this other one on the other side, I'll screw in to this hole down in here. Now you can see this is pretty tight in here, but it's good. And this one will end up going over top for the battery. And these we were going to push down here out of the way. I suppose we could put on the front. And now look at my handy dandy sheet that says what I need for it. Now you can use an aluminum piece for this front end here, or you can use a plastic piece. I'm going to use an aluminum on this one. I use plastic usually, and I've got 4 6mm M3 screws. pretty much up on this one and down on that one. Now to put this in, we use 8mm M3 cap heads, and I have tapped these two holes already. Now when you're putting these in, it's probably easiest to look at the side to see when it's got it nice and tight. Well, didn't I just not record that whole thing? So let's do this again. These two screws, M312 cap head. These three screws, M310 pan head. And you gotta watch when you're putting them in. I tapped all the holes, and I'll show you on the other side. Maybe I'll just flip this over and show you where those holes are, because they're very similar on the other side. And you're going into thin plastic here, a little bit thicker here, and these two you're going right into the chassis. And I'll show you where they go. So the screw holes, reversed, would be these two into the chassis that I've tapped M3, this one into the rear box that I've tapped M3, and these two into the front lower assembly that I have also tapped M3. The rods, the screws go on the back, and there's a nice big hole here. There's two reasons for this hole. One is for the screws to fit into it, but the other reason for this hole is it leaves a little more space on the inside when you're taking the battery out or putting it in. So let's get this guy on. It can sometimes be a little bit tight on the shock bars. This secondary plate has a couple of things to it. They're M2.5, and you have to tap in behind. I tap in behind here the M2.5s to make it easier to put this in. I also, if you're using metal, I tap that as well. Now I always say the screw lengths and sizes, I try and give you some indication in the video, but use the sheet. It's there. I use it all the time to remind myself of what screws we need. These look like 8s. And one goes up here. If I can find the other one, I'll put it in. There it goes. And the other one goes up here. This one goes in here. I sometimes use a bit of masking tape on the other side so that when I'm putting it on, it doesn't fall out. Now, I use resin for this one. You can use the FDM printed ones as well, and they still look pretty good. I tap the holes in these, M3 tap, and when you're tapping, it's a matter of start, back off, start, back off. And the reason you're doing that is, as far as I know, you're releasing some of the pressure on this. I've had some pieces break out when I don't do that. Now once it's in here and you see that there's a few marks, you can use a Sharpie if you really want to take those marks off. So we have one side completed. We got to put the handle in on this one. Look at that. I guess I should probably put that in, eh? Now that you've got more done, you can tighten these down if you want. Just snug. Doesn't have to be tight. Just snug. Now we got all of this stuff to the right place so it's out of the way. I think we can put on the other side. It's very similar to the other side. Same 3, 4, 5 screws that go in. Nothing a little brute force and ignorance can't fix. There we go. This one's not quite ready. So when you're building the trap door, you have this piece and this piece moves on the end. Put a little bit of glue in here to make sure that it doesn't move and come out, because you start in this position and you move it up to lock it in. So we would put it in there and so the nut goes in here, and I don't put glue on it until the screw's in, and you can't put the screw in until you have your vector plate on. Goes like so. So if this is the bottom, you always have the gap there, and you got to make sure the holes are lined up. And it's funny, they kind of look lined up both ways, but the fat one, goes with the tab that goes down. So it's going to be like this, fat one on the bottom. Now this top hole, you want this to go in there pretty freely, so you're going to have to drill that one out, and the others you want to tap to M2.5. Now I just happen to have an M2.5 drill bit, and that's what I'm going to drill it out to. Now for the resistor itself, I use a 2-inch piece of 12 gauge or 2 millimeter aluminum wire. So I paint this, put this piece in, then put the wire in, then flatten the ends. And there's what a finished product looks like when you've cut off the tabs. And just cut them off right about there and there. Now we'll get this started and then I should be able to push it through. Well, maybe not. Okay, I can't push it through. Oh, I'm pushing a bunch of junk out, that's why, I guess. I didn't really clean it out very well. Alright, I'll get this closer. And this one, make sure the screw is on the outside, or the nut is on the outside. And what you want to do with this is make it so that let's get that, so that it will still move when you're gonna do this. You see, it still moves. That's probably the right tightness. And then I put a dab of glue here. Finished product. Finished product. Now, this isn't beautiful. Sorry, it's got some funny paint on it, but it's the one I have to show you. And then we put the door on like so. Yeah, and maybe it would go up. Yeah, there we go. I'll try and show you what it looks like on the inside here. There we go. But we're not going to use this. I'm going to put on the other one, and I won't put this on. I will take this off. Now, if you're using aluminum, you are going to want to tap these holes with M2.5. So it has come to my attention that depending on where you get your aluminum, these holes might not be correct. So I had to re-drill this one, and these two, and now they will fit. So when we put this on, and if you happen to strip the aluminum, just put a nut on the back. It'll be in this area where it doesn't matter anyway. And you got to put this in. And it's not easy to put in at any time. And maybe it would have been a better idea to put it in before the receiver. This one is printed on FDM printer, so it's not resin, and I'm going to put the same rub screws as I did on the other one. I've tapped these to M3. Now that we've got most of the things together, we can put the smoke cartomizer back in. And you got to make sure it's snug or you won't have a connection for the power. Although I tried to make this secure with the screws tightening this, I still press on this when I'm putting the cartomizer in or taking it out because it can turn. You can see it turns a little bit. You don't want that. Down in here, I put a tiny bit of Velcro to hold the battery in place. And we can put the battery in place and do a test of the whole thing if we want. Before I do much testing, I'm going to put the Velcro in there. Hold this guy in place. This is the hook part. There's hook and loop. And I try and put it in there and line up on the battery. This is the loop part. And then when we put this in, it sits right on the Velcro and doesn't move the battery up because of that little indentation. Now this is another one. This is hook, and on the back of this we will put loop here when it's done, so it goes right at the back here for where I put it on the battery. Put the loop guy on. And then when we put this on, I'm not showing you that very well. Let's do it this way, like that. Goes around there, and this guy inside with a little wiggle, and down straight, like that. Now we can test. So the test, we'll turn it off for a second. I'm using my test jig, I'm not using a regular transmitter. So it now says there's no signal. It has acquired the signal. The fan for the ESC starts up. Let's do the basics. Open the doors. Close the doors. Okay, that's good. Flashlights. I'll flip these up so you can see them. Flashlights. It's just good to test this stuff. And let's do a smoke test. Seems okay. And we'll turn off the sound. Okay, so tests okay. We can continue putting things together. Turn it off. Turn this off. And this one to M3 as well, actually. Oh, that one's already tapped, I can see. So that's good. Should have done that before anyway, which I did, apparently. Alright, so that can go in. There's a few parts to the handle. Let's see if we can't get these out and show you. Okay. So I used an aluminum handle, 5 1/4 inches long, 17 millimeters, and the width, I don't remember. The width is 5.5 millimeters wide. And from the front, it is 6.5 millimeters, thereabouts. I mean, pretty close to that is important. So you're going to put this guy in. Now this is on the real trap. This is the one that releases the cartridge. Now on ours, all we're doing is making it so that it moves, and then you can put the screw in through it. So we're going to turn this upside down and get, whoops, there. And you can see it's sticking out here. Move it to the as far front as you can, and then this guy goes in like so. Now you've got a mark for where you need to drill the M3 hole through here. So you can see right there is where it goes, and I just drill it on the spot here. And you get a little bit of stuff here, like some burrs, and I will just remove the burrs with a bigger drill bit. There. It's almost clean. Cleaner anyway. Alrighty. And now you can see the hole. Putting the handle if you're putting the bottom part of the handle on, there's a, hard to see. Can you see it there? There's a nice square bit there, and if you just drop a square nut in there, it'll sit flat eventually. And then what you can do with this one for the handle, you can drop the washer in, then put your M30 screw in, and then if you are clever, you will put this like this, and if you can hold that nut in, there you go, you tighten that up. Top part ready. So now that you've got that in, close the door, put it on, and put your 16mm screw in the side. Alright, so when you're putting this in, you can tuck it in under here first and make sure your servos are up so that you can get these in the right place, because if you don't, you can damage those arms, and putting them back on is a bit of work. A little bit tight here. There we go. Okay. 2 screws go in here, 2 screws go in here, and then we're ready for the world! Now, I forgot to widen these a little bit, the top end, so that the screws will go through. So before you put this in, it'd probably be a good idea to make these holes just a little bit bigger, because they pass straight through it. And we can lift it up so it doesn't go into where the screws are going to tap in. Yeah, I've done this I don't know how many times, and I still forget some things as I go through. Good thing to have a video. Yeah, nice and loose. Because this, like I was saying, the door thing, the doors have to be easy to move. And the harder they are to move, like right now, this one's difficult to move. I'm going to make that hole just, I can see that I want to do it this way a little bit. I'm just going to widen that hole a tiny bit. Yeah, better. The other thing I notice is that it wants to go down, because the door is all the way down here at this end. And like I said, you want this to be as easy as possible. It will wear in, of course, it's steel on plastic, but better to have it as smooth as you can before you start. And these pins have a serrated edge at one end, and you don't want more than 5mm sticking out. 4.5 is fine, or 4, but not more than 5mm, because when you put them in, you will then interfere with the wiring for the flashlights, and you don't want to do that. Next thing you need to do, drill out these holes a little bit bigger and tap M4 screws into them. And then you got to tap the back end with M3, with an M3 tap. Now keep in mind when you're putting these on, You can put these on backwards. The big lip is on the left-hand side, and the overhang is on the right-hand side. I'm going to drill these out a little bit bigger. I'll start with an M3. So this is my M4 tap, and that's an M3 hole. Now I'm going to make sure these are tapped to M3. You do want to go fairly deep with these. It goes in quite a ways. Now, that goes in. This goes in. We can put in these back two 16mm cap head screws, and they go in the back here. Oh, another thing I didn't do. Oh my goodness. Sorry guys, I forgot this too. These have to be drilled out as well. M3. Easier to do it earlier, and you can make them quite loose. And what I mean by quite loose is you can make it so that the drill bit moves, like wanders a bit sideways as you're making the hole, to make the hole like maybe a 3.2mm hole, just so that the screw doesn't catch the sides. And what you're going to do by doing that is make the door move a little bit easier. There we go. Should go through easily. Now when I'm tightening this, I look at the gap here, and I look at the gap here, and I try and make the gaps even, and that should happen. This is what you should have, is really easy movement of the door. And I try and make the gap even. Well, now it's moved that way. And make sure the door moves easily, because if it doesn't move easily, you're going to have problems with the servo taking too much power trying to move the door. Right, now we can put this back. The issue with taking the doors off is the antenna is always in the way. Another 16mm screw. And again, I'm going to look for the gap here and the gap here and try and equalize them. That's the way you really want it to move. Just like that. So easy. This one admittedly isn't as easy, but it's getting better. Alright, now we can put in the two front screws. You do not want these tight. You want to loosen it off a bit so it's easy to move. Oh boy, how do I adjust the doors? Oh, they actually just closed. Yeah, I don't like the adjustment of the doors. I think we're going to fix that. Yep, we're definitely going to be fixing the doors here. Okay, so door setup. On my cheat sheet here, top door limit setup. Channel 4 left and black button.
Door setup.
Okay, now that one needs to come. So what I did there, and it's hard to get it in here, but all I did was close the door more. It was going too far. So we're going to bring it back down. Nope, a little bit more open. One more. There we go. Then we press the black button on your transmitter. It'll be on the far right. And then we get the door close. We're going to close that a little. About there. Press the black button. Light flashes. Then we want to open this one more. That's about right. Leg button. And then I want to open this one more too. I don't know if you could hear that, but there was a little bit of buzzing. I'm going to move this way. You can see the doors open too much. Now you can hear the servo working too hard. We're going to open it a bit until we stop hearing that. And that's right when it's at the right place. Black button. We get the signal. Now when we open it, it opens and closes properly. All right, we can turn this guy. Well, let's open it first and then turn this guy off. Next thing to put in is the screen. So I'm going to take this apart to show you how it goes in. So you've got a piece that has a larger side that goes with the larger side back here. Let's see. This is slightly wider than here, in my humble opinion. Maybe it's the same. Okay, maybe it's not wider. Anyway, the larger piece goes to the back. Just trust me on that. In the kit, if you have a kit, you'll get this screen. And if you don't have a kit, you can buy the screen. In the purchase, buy these things file, it's all there. So that goes in. And then we've got this one that also has a little bit wider end, which goes to the little bit wider end. And if you squeeze that in the middle, it's easier to put in. So if this doesn't hold on the way you want, like, no, this one's okay. Sometimes they tend, like, it depends on what printer you're using, it can fall out, and you can just put a dab of glue in the corners and it'll be all good. Now to put it in, I always start at the back and push at the front, and it snaps in. To take this out, it's from the front. I put my fingers there and I lean against this, not these. I lean against those and pull it up. Put it in, it goes to the back. And it should click in like that. All right. Now what? How do you get the stripes on the doors? Well, I use tape. Now to put the stripes on, you can use yellow electrical tape, and that's all I use. In the movie, you'll notice that there is one with the stripes that goes this way, and that's the one that everybody uses the reference photos on, and there's another one where the stripes are actually reversed, and they would just take these doors and put them on backwards. And if you look carefully in the movie, that's the one that's in the movie. So how do I do this? Well, I take a look at what's there, and I do it all by eye. It is not a 45-degree angle, but it's pretty easy to tell where things go. This one is a little bit past there, and then it does this. So I'll start with that, and I leave them long to begin with so that I can move them easily if I need to. So we start there. Next one goes over this. It goes actually to about here. And don't stretch the tape too much like I just did. Probably about like that. I think this is the easiest way to do it. You're going to have to cut the tape down the middle here. A really sharp knife to do this, by the way. Tape does not like dull knives. For stuff and giggles, right? And then you got to make sure you put these on well. Because you don't want it falling off, although, you know, that depends. Maybe you do want it falling off. And then I got to get this guy. It's a good thing it's a nice sharp knife is all I can say. Kind of figured I'd be doing something like that. It's not perfect. But what prop is perfect anyway? Well, I'm not taking off the doors after all. So there you go. Now this one is probably more movie accurate than this one. Just the direction of the stripes. And now I will cut off the leading edge on these. Be careful if you're pulling something off, because this tape will it will not make you happy if you do that. I would try and cut instead of pulling like I just did. Here again, Mr. Parent, do as I say, not as I do, right? Wow. Okay. And last but not least, let's get this guy. Don't like this one. Me. You can do the same with this if you don't like exactly where it is. It's a little bit harder because you can't go as far. Well, you know what? I am not bothering. That is hard to do. I don't recommend moving the doors like that often. Every so often is okay. And if you really want to close them, you can just turn it on and it should close the doors automatically. I see there's an issue with this one being a little bit too far. So I'm going to have to readjust this door. When you want to put the shocks on, there is a 16mm button head black screw that goes on the bottom. If I could remember where it goes. And I'm going to say far outside. The furthest outside hole on that control arm. It goes to the front here. And that is an M14 screw. Now I've added, this is that little piece. This one's white. I mean, I think black is prettier. This little piece is something that's in the files. Originally I thought it was a nylon lock nut with a washer, and it turns out, after so many different tries of what to do, this is what it is. And it's pretty easy to put on. Make sure you've drilled these holes big enough. There we go. And this is M314. So this one goes to the front, and this one goes to the back. I'll get this off. Well, this one's got a black piece on it. When you've printed your new wheel hub, you're going to have some supports to take out. You could do a little more cleanup in there, but generally that's pretty good. And what fits in here, the beauty of it, is a regular socket will actually fit in there when you want to tighten this nut on. When you have the new style wheel, I just take this whole thing out. All these screws have to come out, and to do it by hand, I'm going to say is definitely possible. Not as much fun as doing it with like a drill or something, but I find doing it by hand gives you a little more control, and you only have to do this once if you play your cards right. Push this guy out. Now you can't tell me that doesn't look stronger. Anyway, this one will fit right on there. What you're looking for on this, there is one of these that lines up directly with a hole. And that one is where I start it. Now you don't have to do that. You can do whatever you want, but I find it easier to line that up. Pull the tire back so this goes in, and then find that one again and line it up. So I found it and I'm lining it up with this hole. And I release the back a little bit, make sure it goes in. Push this way, and then, now you don't want to pull this out really far like that. You just want to have it out of the way. And then you can start putting these back. What you're looking for when you're putting this in, you want this gap here to disappear. I'm going to pull this. I'm going to put another one in before I do that. The last thing I want to do is break this thing. And there it is, just touching. When you have them all in, it should be that this is pretty much touching, the red part should be touching the wheel hub pretty much all the way around. You have a nice big hole here. And if we were to, let's move this stuff out of the way, take this guy off. I like to put it in here first, and then put this one in so it's, you can see it right there. And then when we put this on, well, you can't get in there to see it, but nice and tight, and we've got that done. And there it is. So the last part, there is something that screws in here. Now this one, I always print this out of like a metallic silver thing, and you can see it's got a wider part and a narrow part. Well, the narrow part is to make this look accurate. And there. That's what it looks like on the prop. There's a slot in there. If you put your screwdriver in the slot, you can screw it in. Well, this one's gotten a little loose. There we go. So generally speaking, that looks pretty darn good. And this is what you should have. Well, okay, maybe not this many, but you should have one of these when you're done. If you're wondering what it took to make these videos, yeah, all of these.